Zimbabwe today Reserve Bank cut its headline interest rate from 150% to 150% from 200%, citing slowing inflation and the need to keep the economy on steam. Zimbabwe's currency has dipped some 15% against the US dollar since 2023 started, but the country's gold coin seems to be doing well, trading around $2,000 an ounce last month. Meanwhile, Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko has just departed Zimbabwe after holding meetings with President Mnangagwa on bilateral relations. I'm putting all of this together now into this conversation with Eddie Cross, an investment economist and policy analyst. Good evening. Great evening to see you, Eddie. It is the first time in the new year. Great to see you, my friend.
Yeah, nice to see you too.
Thank you so much. Let me ask your take on today's big interest rate cut by the Reserve Bank, citing the deceleration in inflation.
Well, they're basing this on the month-on-month inflation rates, which have been coming down steadily for about 3 months now. And I think that it's premature, quite frankly, because I don't see anything in the outlook that would justify a significant reduction in interest rates. I think inflation is going to continue to be pretty high here. The real problem is just the basics have not been addressed.
Well, so what should the central bank focus on to keep inflation from going red hot?
Stop printing money.
But the central bank has to print money. That's the job of the central bank. Print money. So if
no, it doesn't. I mean, when you print money in quantities that are greater than the growth rate in the economy, it's automatically inflation. Yes. Automatically inflationary. And this is what they've been doing. And the Minister of Finance, I think, is taking action to remedy that now. So if with the changes that he's recently introduced to the marketplace, we may see some changes going forward. But until there's a fundamental review of the way in which we treat foreign exchange in this country, I don't think that we can really see stable conditions.
What needs to be done? What needs to be done, Neil? Remember the gold coin offering, which started around July last year, was trading around $2,000 an ounce just in January. What further foreign exchange reforms are you looking to see, Eddie?
Well, the gold coins haven't really made any kind of contribution to stability. And in fact, they were very seriously criticized by the IMF in their last review. I don't really think the gold coins are a significant factor in this whole situation. What I think we've got wrong is how we trade our foreign exchange. In those countries around about us, Botswana, Zambia, Mozambique, they've adopted a more classical way in which to trade foreign exchange. And the result has been they've stabilized their money. And they've been able to move away from the US dollar very substantially. In fact, you can't really use the US dollar in any of our neighboring states. And our problem is we continue to use an old system which is no longer really appropriate for our new situation.
But the weekly foreign exchange auction, respectfully, Eddie, the weekly FX auction seemed to be working when it was introduced about a year or so ago, which was the current situation, and it gets published every week. So in terms of the two windows that the Reserve Bank intervened in the market, so what else needs to be done? Why is it difficult for the Reserve Bank to do the same as your neighbors, for example, Zambia?
It's difficult to explain, but I think so many people benefit here from the arbitration, from the manner in which they arbitrage opportunities. When we launched the auction, I think it's now nearly 2 years ago, it was supplying a significant proportion of the demand for foreign exchange, and it was clearing the weekly bids within 2 weeks. And then that slipped in 2022. We ran up a substantial backlog of clearances in the market, and that was highly inflationary in character. And the result is that the parallel market here began to move very rapidly. I mean, today the parallel market's at 1,100 to 1. And, you know, that's just ridiculous. The fundamentals here don't justify that. And I don't think that we should pay too much attention to the local currency because we're 80% US dollars. US dollars are the predominant means of exchange here. And in that particular market, the inflation rate is actually quite moderate.
But tell me about how the investment scenario in Zimbabwe is starting to play out in the new year with the whole issue around inflation, interest rates, when you talk about the debt that the country is trying to deal with and trying to attract foreign investment. How is the investment market looking like into the key sectors? I'm sure you've been not just in Zimbabwe, you've been to a few neighboring countries. What is everybody saying?
In Zimbabwe today, we're seeing a very substantial boom in housing. The construction industry is running flat out. And in addition, we're seeing huge investments in the mining sector. Zimbabwe is very strategically placed for the new economy, for the new metals and minerals like lithium, which are required by the global market. I mean, lithium 18 months ago was $15,000 a ton. It's now $85,000 a ton. We're big gold producers. We're probably number 3 or 4 now in the world. And gold is running at a very high rate. So by and large here, the two main drivers of our economy are construction and the mining industry. Exports are rising at about 30% per annum. We have a very substantial balance of payments surplus. Our fiscal situation is quite sound. We don't have a significant fiscal deficit. Really, everything else in the garden is pretty rosy. It's just this damn instability in our exchange rate with the local currency. In fact, at the moment, if they don't do anything about it, the local currency is dying. And that will not be good for us as an economy because it affects our competitiveness as a nation within the region. In the rest of the region, the main problem at the moment is power. We've got major problems with our hydroelectric plant on the Zambezi River, which is 70% of our requirements, with low water levels in Lake Kariba. But the lake is rising rapidly. Zambezi is in full flood. At one point in the Barotse Plains, the Zambezi River is 40 kilometers wide. We haven't seen that for years. South Africa is in a critical position. They are short today of about 20,000 megawatts of power. They're suffering major blackouts. It's really a serious situation. And if they don't get on top of that, it's not only going to curb growth, it's actually going to curb domestic output. And that's got serious consequences for the rest of us because it is the regional superpower.
I'm sure, Eddie, you've seen a number of big officials from around the world, from the United States to the EU, to China and Russia. Belarus President Lukashenko just concluded a visit to Zimbabwe. So the Russians were here. So who is the government in Zimbabwe leaning on right now to secure much needed foreign investments? China, Russia, the United States?
That's a very interesting question. Because of our isolation from the world banking system due to American sanctions, the Zadera Act has been applied to us now for 22 years. It's the longest running sanctions program in the world. And what the Americans don't fully appreciate is that this isolates us from the global financial markets. There are 3 things that have given rise to the amazing growth in China. First was access to international financial markets at very low interest rates for the last 25 years. The second was open access to world markets. And the third was access to US technology and investment, and in fact, European technology and investment. All of that is denied to Zimbabwe. So we have to rely on ourselves. In the platinum sector, we're spending very considerable sums of money. It's probably close to $2 billion this year on expansion. We're doubling production capacity in the platinum group of metals, and that's all being funded by ourselves. No external funding at all on that. And then the lithium investments, I think by the middle of this year, we will be a major supplier of lithium to the world market. My estimate is our exports will run at about 2 million tons by the end of 2023. Nearly all of that is funded by the Chinese. The Chinese have come in very aggressively. And in fact, it's quite astonishing to me that the Western world, Europe and the United States, have not shown any real interest in developing the very substantial lithium resources here. But you might also say that about many other things in this part of the world. But they are investing heavily in the copper industry in the Congo. In the Congo, there's about $50 billion going into the copper industry. The largest copper mine in the world is being developed there by the Canadians. And copper is a very strategic metal insofar as the future metals market. So I'm very bullish about Southern Africa from a mining point of view.
Yeah.
Our big problem here remains our agriculture, which continues to be crippled by a lack of security.
We thank you for those insights on some of the latest economic news out of Zimbabwe and Southern African region. Thank you so much, Eddie Cross, investment economist and policy analyst. Have a great weekend.